when I finished my Disney Pins Around the World series, I promised that I would do similar videos for the Disney Studio Store Hollywood and Walt Disney Imagineering, and so today that's what we get to start with, talking about Disney Studio Store Hollywood pins. Disney Studio Store Hollywood pins, I'd say, are currently the most highly valuable and desired pins that are openly accessible to the public, since Walt Disney Imagineering pins, which we'll talk about in another video, are cast member exclusives. The Disney Studio Store Hollywood is often abbreviated to DSSH, so if you hear people talking about that acronym, they're talking about the Studio Store. DSSH is located right smack dab in the middle of Hollywood, on Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles, and it is also a Ghirardelli Soda Fountain. It formerly used to be called the Disney Soda Fountain, or DSF. Sometimes people will still refer to it as that, but it kind of partnered or joined with Ghirardelli a few years ago, and so it is now the Disney Studio Store and Ghirardelli Soda Fountain. Because it's a Ghirardelli, people will often see and say, oh, well, there is a Ghirardelli in Disney Springs, or there is the Ghirardelli in California Adventure. Can you get those same pins there? The answer is no. You can only get the pins that I'm going to be talking about at the Disney Studio Store Hollywood location right on Hollywood Boulevard. The Studio Store does have a Facebook page that I recommend you follow because that's where they always announce what pins are going to be coming up. They give details about releases. I have my notifications turned on for the page because sometimes there will be a surprise online release, although Facebook notifications have become worse and worse and I get notified like an hour after it was posted. But if you're looking to get into Studio Store Hollywood pins, definitely follow their Facebook page so you can stay up to date on the latest releases. Now, if you walk into the Studio Store and are expecting a big pin store, you'll probably be a little bit disappointed, since it obviously is first and foremost just a Ghirardelli Soda Fountain. You can get ice cream there. So they do have a little bit of Disney merchandise there. It is located right next to the El Capitan movie theater. I've been there one time before. During one of our trips to Disneyland, we decided to do a day out in LA. I'll say it's not the most pleasant or easiest place to get to because, like I've said, it's right in the middle of Hollywood. So it's kind of like tourist central there. They have all those people who are dressed up as like the knockoff characters that want to get money if you take your picture with them. So its location really is better and more geared toward tourists who happen to be checking out parts of Hollywood and might want to stop in for ice cream, you know, as opposed to catering just to the pin traders. So DSSH has a few different types of pins that they offer. If you just go into the store at any time, they do have now a pretty decent selection of open edition pins. I'll put scrolling right here all of the open edition pins that they currently have. They have one that are themed to Hollywood and with the El Capitan. They have some Hollywood-esque characters. They have some characters eating popcorn. They have a sketchbook series. So if you go into the store, you can find these pins there at any time. And you'll always very clearly be able to tell the open edition pins because they come on these blue backer cards. The Studio Store pins all have their specific backer cards that look a little bit like movie reels. And all pins from the Disney Studio Store Hollywood are notable because they have a different type of back stamp than the ones available in the parks. The back stamp on these pins always features little ice creams. And then it always has the Disney Studio Store logo on there. Now, the other pins that you can luck out and get available if you just happen to go into the store at any time are Pin Trader Delight pins. Pin Trader Delight pins feature different Disney characters eating ice creams, and these pins are actually a gift with purchase that you get for ordering the Pin Trader's Delight Sundae. And Pin Trader Delight is usually always abbreviated to PTD. The Pin Trader Delight pins always feature different Disney characters eating some form of ice cream. So sometimes it might be like a root beer float, sometimes it might be a full sundae, or sometimes it might just be a big stack of ice creams. They'll usually release 3 different PTDs at a time that you can get, and the LE sizes range between LE 200 to 500, with the most common being around an LE 300. So if you go into the store to get a PTD, it's a limit of 2 per person per day, and you cannot get 2 of the same pin. And it's also restricted to ages 4 and up, which they had to implement because people would bring their small, like newborn children and try and use them to get a Pin Trader Delight because these PTDs can often be quite valuable. So although these really technically are supposed to be just a gift with purchase and, you know, the ice cream is the thing that you get, some of these PTD pins can be incredibly valuable. What's nice about the PTDs now is that they come on these special Pin Trader Delight backer cards in the cellophane wrapping. Before, they used to come in the little tiny plastic bags direct from the factory, but then they moved to cards and then they moved to putting it in a cellophane. So you end up getting a much nicer collectible. Because the Pin Trader Delights are low limited edition sizes, the most popular ones can sell out very quickly, sometimes within just a few hours. So if you're just somebody who happens to be by Hollywood and checking out the store, you may still find a Pin Trader Delight available. It might just be among the lesser desirable characters. Once all of the available Pin Trader Delight styles are sold out, there's then what's called a PTD flip, which basically means it's going to change from the current set of PTDs to the new set. Previously, it used to be as soon as one would sell out, they'd switch to a new one, but that ended up getting a little bit crazy for them. I think at one point there were like 3 flips in a single day. So now what they'll do is a surprise flip. They'll kind of wait a little bit and then surprise announce and put out a new set. And Disney Studio Store Hollywood on their Facebook page always announces when a new set of Pin Trader Delight pins are available. In addition to the Pin Trader Delight pins, what the Disney Studio Store Hollywood is really known for are their special limited edition pin releases. Now these releases are quite the ordeal and are a big contributing factor to why a lot of the Disney Studio Store Hollywood pins are pretty expensive. I have a whole video talking about why Disney pins are so expensive and go a little bit more in depth with this. But not only are these pins low limited edition sizes, but it takes a lot of time and effort to actually get them. So about twice a month there are limited edition pin releases at the Disney Studio Store Hollywood. These pin releases are pretty much always themed to different Disney movies. Since this is Hollywood, it's right next to the El Capitan Theater. Whenever there's a new Disney movie coming out, they'll always have a pin release themed to that. So they just recently came out with a bunch of Frozen 2 pins. Sometimes they'll have other series of pins that they continue, like cutie characters. They might have pins themed to postcards or greeting cards or film strips. And this is usually always with Disney movie characters, so you really won't find any Disney parks or attraction themed pins here ever. They'll also do series like the Beloved Tales, where there's a classic scene from different Disney and Pixar movies, and they also counter that with the Dark Tales series, where they feature different Disney villains. They're also known for their El Capitan Theater marquee pins, which typically go along with whatever themed movie pins are being released. So, say you want to attend one of these limited edition pin releases at the Disney Studio Store Hollywood. Well, they begin pretty much at the absolute crack of dawn. For most of the recent releases, you have to be in line by 5 a.m. Then when you're in line, you get a wristband, which they use to count up how many people they have there. Then what they do is once they have the total number, they create little slips where, say if there are 600 people that showed up, we'll have numbers 1 through 600. Then what you do is you get to randomly select one of those numbers, and that number will be your place in line to be able to try and buy pins. Most of the pins that are released are between LE 300 and 400, so usually it's only when you get a number 300 or lower that you're even able to buy the pin. So you could show up at like 2 in the morning and be the first person in line, and you could pull the last number and not end up with any pins. So not only do you have to get there insanely early in the morning, it also totally comes down to luck. A super popular release can have like up to about 1,000 people there. For some of the less popular releases, there might not even be 300 people there, and sometimes the pins don't even sell out. They didn't always have this lottery system, but having the system in place ensures that you don't have people just camping out for days lined up trying to get the pins. And if people don't end up with a good number, say they get number 500, and it's like, well, all these pins are probably going to be sold out by the time I get there. There's obviously all these other pin traders around, and so they can either try and trade with other people in line and still get the pins. But either way, you're going to be dedicating a few hours very, very early in the morning at these limited edition pin releases. For these pin releases, they usually always offer a surprise pin release. This is announced the morning of separately on the Studio Store Facebook page, and it's a much lower edition size. It's typically around an LE 150, so you have to be able to luck out and get a really good number if you want to try and get the surprise surprise pin. As of late, it pretty much has always been 1 pin per style per person, and the retail prices of these pins are pretty much always higher than what you see in the parks. I feel like most of the recent releases are pretty much all upwards of $20. So the base prices of the pins themselves are relatively high, and that then compounds with just how much effort and work goes into actually getting them. So that's why for these limited edition pin releases, nobody can really offer pre-sales in advance because there's no way to know that they're gonna luck out and get a good enough number to be able to buy these pins. So I don't really recommend buying into a pre-sale because that is very risky. Typically right when the release happens, prices will be pretty high because people just went through all this work to try and get them. So usually it's about waiting the right amount of time where the market has become kind of saturated, and then it's more so about the pin value and less about the investment of time it took to get them. So you might be saying, hey, like me, I don't live near California. How do I get these pins myself? Lucky for you, the Disney Studio Store Hollywood does some limited edition pin releases online a few times a year. However, these online releases are not necessarily easier than in person, although it does take a lot less effort. Sometimes these online releases will be scheduled and announced in advance, so you can mark your calendars for Friday, December 20th at 9 a.m. Pacific time because they're going to be doing an online release for Star Wars Rise of Skywalker pins. The Star Wars pins are almost never popular, so that will be among the easiest online releases if you do want to participate. But for regularly scheduled online releases, you have to keep in mind that you're competing with potentially up to thousands of other people across the US who are also trying to get these pins, and the pins usually are only LE 300 or 400. For the last few online releases, the Disney Studio Store Hollywood has finally implemented an online waiting room. When a release goes live, the Studio Store on their Facebook page always posts the link, and before they had the waiting room, the site always just instantly crashed. It was a perpetual nightmare. Basically, everybody ended up upset, but they now have this virtual waiting room where you want to be ready as soon as that link goes live on Facebook. You click on it and it'll tell you what number you are in line, and then they'll just let a few people through at a time to be able to check out and get the pins, and then you can hope that there's still something left when it's your turn to come up. So they actually just very recently had an online pin release, and it was a surprise release for the Little Mermaid 30th anniversary. I found the link posted on Facebook about 15 minutes after it went live, so by that time I was about number 800 or 900 in line. So do keep in mind that the number is also inflated by people who are on multiple devices. So typically when you're that high up in line, you're just not going to end up with any of the limited edition pin releases, and that seemed like it was going to be the case for me. So 50 minutes into the release, they paused the line and said that all of the limited edition pins are sold out. Get out of the queue if you're looking for them because they're all gone. But because I was planning to do this video, I decided I was gonna stay in the queue and just go through everything. So my turn finally came up, and when you're through, you're greeted with this page, which almost always trips up people who are doing this for the first time because there's these very attractive boxes where it looks like you should put in your last name and your email address, which you do not do that. You only put that information in if you are already partway through registering and get booted off the system. So the only thing that you do is you click this box that you agree to their terms and press continue. Then all you have to do is put in your personal information, shipping information, and then it'll take you to the screen with the pins. So it was much to my surprise when I got to the screen with the Little Mermaid pins that almost all of them were available. Obviously the Ariel and the surprise pins were sold out, but most of the rest were available, so I said, hey, might as well get the Prince Eric pin, and then I also decided to get the Ursula pin. And then with these online releases, you can also get other pins they still have available. So they still had a very expensive jumbo pin and also the Maleficent Mistress of Evil pins because nobody wants them. So you can get those if they didn't sell out at previous releases. And then finally, you can also purchase any of the open edition pins that they have. So these online releases can be good if you do just want to get some of the open edition pins. Now, the thing with these online pin releases is that they always ship via UPS, requiring signature confirmation, and shipping cost is $12. So if you're just going to be getting one singular pin, you add on that $12 shipping and that price jumps up a lot. So this is where it's like, oh, you can finally get Studio Store pins yourself at cost, But when you add on that shipping cost, sometimes it can be close to the upcharge if you buy a pin from somebody who intended an in-person release. And I also think international shipping is available, but it's around $30. So shipping is really such a bummer that it's just so expensive. So from this release in total, I decided to get the Ursula and Eric pins. And the one pin that I really wanted to pick up was the Anger Open Edition pin. I think it's really cute with his popcorn. So it always takes a number of weeks after the release for the pins to actually start shipping out. So you're gonna have to wait a while, and sometimes there can be a big delay from the first people who receive them to the final people who receive them. And I actually got an email from the Studio Store Hollywood saying the Ursula pins were gonna be delayed because there was a manufacturing error. So there can definitely be issues with that, but these releases are either extremely satisfying or extremely angering, because you could luck out and click that link right away and you're like number 100 in line and you can get all the pins, or you can also click that link seemingly right away and end up like number 1,000 in line and come back with nothing. So the Studio Store does offer some other types of pins in addition to what I've already mentioned. Sometimes they'll have a singular surprise pin release just randomly throughout the day. Often these will be associated to maybe a holiday, so maybe it's a Happy Father's Day pin. Oftentimes it might be like a surprise movie anniversary pin. So this is where they'll like announce on Facebook midday and then people will try and race over to the store to get it before it sells out. In this season, they also offer limited edition Toys for Tots pins. So I believe this year they're offering 3 different styles and they're rotating which is offered depending on which release week it is. So you can bring in up to 2 toys and get 2 limited edition 400 pins. So that's really nice because you're able to donate a toy and then as a pin trader, you get this really nice collectible pin in return. The Disney Studio Store Hollywood will also hold special pin trading events throughout the year. I'd kind of equate them to like the big Epcot pin trading event at Walt Disney World, except they're much more exclusive. They have much fewer tickets available. Often it's quite expensive, but they will generally have some pins that are released there first for the guests to purchase. They'll have some pin trading boards with some Studio Store pins that you can get. They hold them at various locations, but I think before they have held one at the Disneyland Hotel. I then did also want to mention that you will find a decent number of fake Disney Studio Store Hollywood pins. So these pins can and are faked like any other Disney pin, even pins that are a little bit more intricate like pin on pin or stained glass. And there are a number of fake pins that will come in fake packaging. It's a fake backer card even. But with these pins, it's pretty easy to figure out which pins are faked since they're all low limited edition sizes. And if you see a seller on eBay selling a pin that was released like 4 years ago and they've sold upwards of 10 of them, that's a pretty good indicator that they don't have the real deal. So what I did is I pulled out all of the Disney Studio Store Hollywood pins I have onto this board so that I can kind of show the variety and different types of pins that they offer. So here's a little bit of an overview of all of the Disney Studio Store Hollywood pins I have. As you can tell, most of them are Zootopia pins. Up on top here, I have all of my Pin Trader Delight pins. So you can see there's quite a variety in the different types of ice cream styles that they do. This Pacha pin is one of the older ones where the pins were a little bit smaller. It was kind of basic with the characters just holding ice cream. But these Zootopia ones are all newer PTDs, and I feel like the designs are a little bit more integrated and apt. Like, I love how Flash is too slow and his ice cream is already melted, and then Finnick's ice cream is actually just a big jumbo pop. Then here I have a Beloved tail and then 2 Dark tails. So these are really 2 of the series that Disney Studio Store Hollywood is known for. The Beloved tails have been going on for much longer, and some of the most valuable ones can be close to $1,000 in value. I do have one of the El Capitan Theater marquee pins. Just like they have Beloved Tales pins for most all movies, they have an El Capitan marquee pin. Here are 2 Judy Hopps pins, and this one is the Toys for Tots pin that came out just this year. So that's an Ellie 400, and this Judy is an example of one of the new Popcorn Open Edition pins. This pin right here is actually the only branded Disney Soda Fountain pin that I have. This pin is the one surprise pin that I have. I was lucky and was successful in the Up online pin release. So this surprise pin, I don't think it was much lower in open edition size, but very happy I was able to get it. Then with the Rescuers pins, I have this one is an example of some of the movie anniversary pins that they do. I'm pretty sure this one is only an LE of 200. I have some fun Yzma pins here. What I really like is how much Yzma kitty cat that they offer. You can see I have quite a number of other Zootopia pins, all from various series, and whenever they have a Zootopia pin in a similar style, they'll have pins for other movies. So sometimes it'll be kind of interesting themes, like this was a whole set of ice cream characters. They had a full set of 4th of July characters, and this pin is very similar to this pin here, and this pin set was from the initial first Zootopia pin release. Oftentimes, they will do these pin releases just before the movie comes out, so a collector will kind of be uncertain if they really do want to collect it or not. But the pins that I'm missing from the set, I don't have the marquee pin, and then I don't have the Mr. Big Surprise pin. But overall, these pins really are quite large and nice. They often have pin-on-pin elements, some extra details, and so that's also why they're a little bit more special to collect. So hopefully this was a pretty comprehensive overview all about Disney Studio Store Hollywood pins. DSSH pins are pretty fun to collect because they're usually always larger, more detailed, more intricate than the pins that they release in the parks, and there is always this element of, trying to be able to find them, trying to get them for a good deal. And they also often can be quite unique because there's nowhere else that you can get Pin Trader Delight pins. So as a companion to this video, I'll also later do a video talking all about Walt Disney Imagineering pins. But thanks for watching!